welcome to the Swamp School's live radio show, Swamp School Live. My name is Mark Seelinger. I am the director and founder of the Swamp School. I'll hang up here. And I want to thank you for joining us today. We've got a lot to cover. We're actually going to be going over ARDRs, RRSs, JDs, PJDs, and DCs. So just a few acronyms there. We definitely have alphabet soup whenever we have these sort of things coming up. So that's kind of fun. Before I get started, I just want to do a couple little shout outs here. I've got, let me just take this away here. I'm going to be doing all this. And a quick shout out to our friends at Carolina Habitats over in Pittsburgh. Oh, actually, it's Chapel Hill, technically. Chapel Hill. If you're looking for some really cool native plants, definitely reach out to Kurt out there and check them out. They're in down Dawson Road, which is out in the middle of nowhere, seems like, but it's about 15 minutes near west of Carborough, so it's not that far. But definitely reach out to Carolina Habitats. They've been a great friend to the Swamp School, and we just wanted to reach out to them for that. So with that, I'll just jump back over here. So before we get started, a couple other little things I wanted to go over. We want to also remind you that you can call in, and I'm just looking for that. So if you want to call in, our call number is 919-297-2540, and we'd love to hear from you. I actually have a written request question, which I'm going to get to kind of, I'll take calls at any point, but basically this one was specifically related to ARDR. So we'll talk a little bit about ARDR first, and then I'll jump into the question. But that was, essentially that was coming up there. A couple other things I want to just pop over here. We do have some job openings that are that we've been asked to let you know about. So let me fade over to that. And you can check out our website at swampschool.org. Just look for jobs. And these are the listings. We may have a few more. This was a screenshot from a few days ago, but we do have folks reaching out to us, letting us know about jobs. So if you are looking for a job, a great place to take a look for a job. If you are looking to hire, a great place to put your job. We've got a lot of traffic through our site, and we'd be happy to promote your job. So just let us know. And if you've got a extra special promotion you want to let us know about, we are looking for sponsors. So we definitely could use some help with that. So at any rate, that's what's coming up. Let me get back to me here. And we have a lot of stuff to cover today. So I'm going to kind of jump right into it. What I'll do is let me pull over I kind of like to present, kind of and kind of talk in the background here. So I'm going to give you the rundown here, basically, of the ARDR stuff that we're looking at. Back last year, it was actually July when the documents actually came out. But on August 1st, the Army Corps of Engineers basically announced this new Aquatic Resource Delineation reporting with new resources. And the other resource was the RRS, which was still kind of in its infancy at that point. It was being used, but it wasn't entirely ready to go yet. And I want to go over that too. We actually have a sandbox access to it, which they really like us to use because every time you submit, if you want to play around with the RRS, you generate a document, and then they have to do something about it. So that's a problem. Also, before I forget, on the feed here, on the upper right-hand corner, I can't really show because this is what you're looking at. You'll see a little thing that says Q&A. If you don't want to call in, you are definitely welcome to just hit in the Q&A, and you can ask questions there as well. It's sort of like a chat kind of thing, but try that out. We haven't used this one yet, so if somebody's listening and wants to call in, we'd love to hear from you. So we just get a question, just say hi, if nothing else, so they know it is working. That would be great. But again, I'll throw the number up here, and then I'm going to roll into the thing here. So if you do want to call, again, the way the calling works is we have a call screener, Raina, who will take your call. She'll put you on hold. She'll tell you you're going to go on the air, and you're ready to go. And that's the process. But if you want to just chat in as well, feel free. And I can see those directly, so we can do either of those. So anyway, just looking for we're trying to make this a call-in show to ask questions. So actually, you know what? I'll tell you what I'll do is I'm going to start out with a question because I actually have an answer, and it kind of rolls into this ARDR thing. And well, I don't know, go into this. The question I basically got was, what is the reason that the Army Corps does not want us to provide jurisdictional analysis in the ARDR? So we kind of have to get into the ARDR and what exactly it is. But in the short version of it, it's essentially a wetland report. I've always included labeled WOTUS maps on the analysis in the ARDR and the adjacent wetlands, non-adjacent wetlands, and so forth. And I've been told by the Corps not to do this. Savannah Jacksonville, 9 out of 10 times they agree with me, so it saves time in the approval process, which makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. The issue is that actually, let me jump into the document here. I bookmarked a page here, and this is the 2025 document on the basically how to put the report together. And we'll scroll down a bit. Actually, what I'll do is let me go through this. So I'm going to answer this question eventually. I'm terrible at answering questions with this. But basically, here are the elements of the ARDR. So this is a report. Now, why did the Corps do this is probably one of the more pressing questions. And the reason is they had to. The problem they were running into was that the Corps, not going to put me up here, so not like I'm just talking to myself here. I think that won't cover me up too much. But the issue is that the ARDR was meant to kind of combat some of the problems they were having. And I have to say that a lot of this relates to training issues. So this is a direct bearing on the work that we do. And some of the problems were that typically they would get an application for a preliminary jurisdictional determination, which we need to kind of go over that issue. But basically the PJD and the AJD, and so I guess now's a good time to kind of do a refresher on that, which is the idea with that is that is the jurisdictional determination the Corps is making, meaning whether or not the site is jurisdictional, meaning it's a waters of the United States, and the Army Corps of Engineers can tell you can or cannot do something to the property. That's jurisdiction. So they're establishing jurisdiction. Well, there's two different types, broad categories. One is an approved JD, and that's been the gold standard for many, many years, which was they basically do the review in detail of what you provide. They go out in the field, they verify the line, and they basically confer with you, and they may do their own research to determine whether or not the site meets the connectivity standard that we now have to deal with under the new WOTUS guidance and rules, and what we're expecting to come out of DC soon. So the issue there is that it's basically what you've got is you've got a whole bunch of folks that are putting together these reports based on those kind of standards. Just one quick point on the chat. You do have to join it, which is one extra step. So you have to join it, and it does. If you scroll down, it'll ask you if you want to do it anonymously or if you want to do it if you want to put your name down. So you just have to do that. But it does say join. So if you haven't joined the Q&A yet, you still have to join. So, but that's the process. So I just got a note there. So, but anyway, so back to the JDs and so forth. So basically what we have is the approved JD is the Army Corps basically says that they have authority over the property and they have done all the due diligence and it would stand up to legal scrutiny. And that's courtesy of the 2016 Hawks case. The PJD is a little different animal. The idea there is that the Corps there may be field work involved. They may come out to the site and they're going to verify the footprint where you did the work. So it's going to verify, yes, this is a wetland. It looks like a wetland. It smells like a wetland. The only thing they're not going to tell you is whether it's jurisdictional or not. So that's kind of annoying because, what's the point here? But the point is that that's an extra layer and effort on their part. And that's the one they get sued on over all the time. So what they say is, with the PJD, if you agree with them that this site is potentially jurisdictional, then the idea is it's preliminary jurisdiction. But the idea is that you basically assume it is, and therefore whatever you're going to do in it would have fallen under their jurisdiction as a permitting activity. You can do the nationwide permit, and you can do perfectly fine, and it kind of makes sense for the nationwides. The problem is when you run into sites that may have not been completed yet, maybe they're getting worked on, and they're kind of caught in this, kind of limbo of jurisdictionalness. Well, it's gotten pretty clear as to what's jurisdictional or not. So the idea basically is that you get the PJD as a way to shortcut the whole argument over whether something's jurisdictional or not. I'm not quite sure what the hang-up is in claiming jurisdiction, other than you simply tell, I think what we're looking at right now is they are looking for something out of Washington that is basically going to say, A, B, C, D meets jurisdiction. That sort of direct, concrete, operational. We want exactly what it's going to take to make something jurisdictional. Right now, it's loosely interpreted, and the Supreme Court has ruled on it. But that's essentially, they're loosely interpreted. So they basically don't count on us, for them being the Corps, on giving you a jurisdictional determination anytime soon. And the problem with these two approaches is that an AJD is, they're formally going on the hook and saying, yes, it's jurisdictional. But the whole process of the permitting starts with the PCN. So you submit the prior construction notification, yet another acronym, so the prior construction notification into the Corps, and sometimes it's a joint permit with the state. And they say, okay, they've got 30 days to review that to tell you whether or not the application is complete. So it's sort of like an administrative review. Did you data forms, do you have pictures, all that kind of stuff, and also the details of the project. So we basically have that process. Well, it starts, the 30-day clock starts as soon as you submit. It ends either when they declare you administratively complete. Essentially, the PCN is complete. And then they have an additional time to review the actual application. I've heard tell it's up to 45 days longer. I've heard a lot of people tell me it's only 45 days total. I've gotten a little bit of variation on that. I'd be curious if anybody's got an insight on that out there in Cyberland there, if you want to just even chat it in there or Q&A it in. But I've heard 30 days basically to get the PCN approved, basically meaning it's complete, and then they have an additional 45 days to review it. Well, the issue with the AJD is that it's assumed that it's going to take longer than 30 days for the AJD process to move forward. And the problem is the PCN requires either a PJD or an approved AJD to move forward. Well, PJD, everybody agrees the thing's jurisdictional, so nobody's fighting about it. An AJD, there may be controversy. So the clock doesn't start with the PCN until the AJD has been approved, and that could take years. so that's a problem. It's just not really feasible. So a lot of firms would just go ahead with the PJD and not worry about the AJD. So that's the whole story there. The downside to that is that you are basically giving away the land to the Corps in a sense. And I'm not sure once they get this new regulation out, if that practice is going to be continued. So it's an issue with the process here. I'm going to just take a quick break here and see if I can fix something in our Vimeo here. But I think something's not working here. I'm going to end it and I'll start it up again. See if that works. I'm going to try something, if you don't mind here. I'm sorry, we had a little technical problem, and I will see if I can fix it here. It's always fun doing this real time. So let me see. Let's just see what I'm seeing. If I'm seeing the little box there. Yeah, it's there. It's there. All right, let me close that. Okay, so if it works, hopefully, try it now. I just turned it off, turned it back on again. So the classic. So anyway, we'll see. Hopefully that works. So try it again. Just say hi. Anybody out there, if you could try it again, it should be working. I just turned it on, turned it off, and I did see it on my end at least. If not, otherwise it's a Vimeo problem. We've got more issues to deal with. We'll try that again. But anyway, let's see if it works in here. I see it in our stream, but it's working there. Okay. So back to the question related to, let me see here. Back to the question related that our student asked here, our friend asked, the issue with asking for a JD up front or saying it's jurisdictional, they say, try the chat again. They don't know what you're talking about. In the upper right-hand corner of the feed, there should be, and basically the stream, there should be a little box that says Q&A in the upper part of that video feed. If you just click that should light up the chat. Hopefully that works. But it's actually just Q&A. It doesn't say chat in the upper part of the video itself. So back to this. The issue with the JD is that they are not wanting the consultant to tell them something's jurisdictional. Now, the problem is that the mapping is really what it actually specifically says that it's working. Okay, you kept saying it's fixed without explaining what's fixed. I just turned it on, turned it off. I'm sorry, we're getting a little feedback here. But we do have it should be working. So at least I'm seeing on my end from the video stream I'm seeing, the chat should be working. Let me just double check, because there's a little, if you look in the corner of the Swamp School, if you're on the video, you're watching it. Hold on a second. And you go to the page. I need to turn off the sound. Yeah, there's a little thing that says Q&A, a little black, it's like a black border on the side. You'll see a thing that says Q&A. If you click that, let me just ask a question of myself. Hi. And there we are. Okay. Yeah, it's just a matter of turning it on, turn it off. Okay. There we go. All right, it's worked for me. I'm talking to myself in multiple layers here. This is going to blow up. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that, but hopefully we got that working now. So yep, it's working now. Great. And I see Raina has just said hello to me. Wonderful. I will reply back and just say hi. So my plan here is, if you want to type in a question here, and we will, I will answer to it talking, not actually replying, because I am the worst typer on the planet. So I use Dragon Naturally Speaking for just about everything. I love that thing because I can talk to myself and write at the same time. So I'm terrible. I think my hands are reversed or something. Okay, back to the ARDR issue. So the problem the Corps is having with the idea of saying something's jurisdictional is you could argue that it's a little presumptuous to say that it's jurisdictional, but the more the problem, I think, really relates to the mapping. It specifically says, I'm just going to jump ahead here on the screen, which we've been stuck on for a while now. Let me go to, I know you're probably getting dizzy. They had it in bold here. It says, important. The delineation map should not include any labeling regarding the jurisdictional status of the delineated aquatic resources. You can describe it as jurisdictional in the report and basically say, okay, I think this resource is jurisdictional. That's they don't say you can't do that. But what the problem is that when you start putting things on maps tend to persist and they hang around for a long time. So I think it gets confusing if you start sending them maps with pictures of, delineated wetlands that say these are the jurisdictional ones, these are non-jurisdictional ones. Although it would make the mapping clear, the problem is that it definitely would complicate things in terms of trying to review the application. So they're specifically saying that. Now, whether they'll deny you, or bounce your report back, I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. I kind of doubt it, but it depends on if they get uppity about it. So, but anyway, that's the issue. So that's where that came from. So the short answer to a very long answer to a short question is that the Corps basically does not want you to put the JD information on the map until they finally issue a JD. Now, if it's a PJD, that gets really confusing because you're assuming that everything is quote unquote jurisdictional, but it may not actually be jurisdictional in the long run. So some of this should get cleared up when we see the final rule. The final rule should have some technical guidance in exactly what is the jurisdictional aspect of the site, and what's the procedure. I see a jurisdictional procedure manual coming in our future, something like that, if and when they do this. I mean, it's way late. The public comment period ended in January. And, 30 days, 60 days, and as a matter of fact, there was an email out and a couple of news articles that around the middle of March, they were getting ready to release it. And the director of the EPA was like, yeah, any day now, any day now. Well, that was March. So here we are almost June, and we still don't have anything to deal with. So just to go through this real quick, this is the document. You can download it directly from the Corps website. And this is off the headquarter website, and it has the requirements. So you can see here, general background and site information, all the basic stuff here. There is a big issue here of right of entry documentation, and there is a form, ENG 6294, that's recommended. That's basically the official Army Corps of Engineers form that they like to see as far as using right of entry documentation. So they've got that in there, and they will not enter private property without explicit written authorization from the property owner, or if they have a warrant. So you don't want that day. That's for violation cases, but they can enter based on a warrant. So that's a heads up. Now, field data collection, and you can see we've got a lot of data here. Now, I'm not trying to turn this. We actually have an ARDR class, so there's a whole class on how to fill this out. And this webinar's radio show here is not meant to replace that, but it does give you an idea what they're looking for. So a lot of data here. Basically the methodology, and we love to see that. Like using one of the biggest mistakes that we're seeing lately is consultants who are used to working in one particular region, and lo and behold, they apparently those are the only data forms they own. So they're working in, let's say, the Atlantic Gulf coastal region, all the time, and then all of a sudden, they get a job in the the mountains or something, or Piedmont, and lo and behold, that's the form they use, the wrong forms, and that's a problem. So that will be reflected, presumably, in your field data collection methodology. I'm in the Eastern Mountains and Piedmont, and I'm in LLRP, MLRA 136, or something like that. And your data forms ought to match that. That's kind of hugely important. So, and you would be surprised as to how few of those actually do match. So it is a concern there. So we got a lot of description about the methodologies, what was used. Did you use ordinary head watermark? Did you use the rapid ordinary watermark data sheets? Even SDAM, you could throw some stuff that in there. Also, if you're doing the antecedent precipitation tool, the methodology for that should be in here. Then you get the site conditions, which is where the APT comes in as, did it rain? What's the rainfall been like for the last 90 days? What's it been like, kind of the immediate time frame? We're in the midst of a drought here in the East Coast, so that's going to definitely mess with everybody's, basically their delineations, because we have a lot of problems with, seeing water at this point. Then we finally get to Section 4, which I always thought was kind of funny. Section 4 as in Section 404. But Section 4 is the Aquatic Resources Inventory, and this is where you get down to brass tacks on what's out there. You're going to presumably have data forms that match, so you're going to say, well, you've got a stream, a lake, a pond, a wetland. I've got a data form for this and a data form for that. Now, they want a summary of all the aquatic resources in the review area. They also want the Cowardin classification, presumed Cowardin classification. So this is different. For many, 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 many years, we've been teaching our students that on the data form itself, you report what was mapped by the Fish and Wildlife Service, the NWI mapping, and that hasn't changed because it says on the data form NWI mapping, and you could be standing in the middle of a swamp that wasn't there when they did the mapping, or they just missed it, and so you report, well, that wasn't, that was not mapped or something like that. But what they want you to do is using the same methodology of basically the procedure, the Cowardin classification, that they want you then to tell them what type of system that is. And interestingly, that's not as easy as it sounds. And we just happen to we're actually in the throes. I think we got that class done. We're doing a couple classes. They're kind of like mini courses. And one of them is how to actually field implement the Cowardin classification. So it's not just a, PFO1. Okay, everything's a PFO1 all of a sudden. You have to get down to some more detail. So it's designed to do that, because there's another manual out there that basically deals with the actual implementation side. So we kind of combined all that together on how to do that. So that's required, and that's kind of it's a nuance that we now could actually take a fair amount of time. The HGM issues, hydrogeomorphic models, they want to know about that, the hydrologic characteristics. So we're looking at, that's also another thing that the ARDR would require. And then we've got your supporting maps. We've got your topo maps, elevation maps, the map itself. And again, they mentioned here they don't want the down here, they do not want the delineation just to show that it's jurisdictional or not until you're finally done, if you're doing that. Now, a couple things that are a little bit different, and this was one of the few places that I've seen this written down by the Corps, because they never really did this before. And the 87 manual is really the only place that describes how to actually do a wetland delineation. And the rule of thumb was that they wanted one data point per plant community. And then if you're doing transects, then you do one data point per plant community found on that transect, which always ends up being a lot. But what they're looking for here is for wetland data points. So you document a wetland on the data form, should be provided by representation within the plant community of the review area. So it's conceivable that you could have a whole, let's say you have a mosaic of a bunch of little wetlands and they're all the same, PEM kind of thing. Well, you could probably use the same data form to represent those, providing it does. But what they are looking for is when you're dealing with this, you also have to have that upland wetland boundary. And basically you want to have the data point for the upland. And a lot of people do upland data points and they'll do like one as like it's almost like a standard or reference one. And that's not really what they're meaning. They're meaning essentially that you've got a data point, in the wetland, you got a data point out of the wetland, and they should be relatively close to each other. Now, you don't have to do one for every single one. If they're the same. If they're different, you do. So that's the issue, meaning the different, different types of wetlands. And if the uplands are different, you might have a pine forest as an upland, and then you have this grassy meadow as an upland. Well, those are two different plant communities. So you're still back into that one wetland data point, or one data point per plant community. But it does vary on whether or not you've got how many of those you actually have, and so forth. So, and then you can always get, if you're dealing with the larger sites, then you're back to the transects anyway. So it's going to be a lot more. But this is one of the few places I've actually seen them giving you some actual written guidance on this. And this was not really written as guidance per se. It was written as essentially a memo. So the technical document. So, take it for that. But they are telling you, it's a warning shot across the bow. This is what they're looking for. So that's really, really important. Okay. Just more maps. They want the NRCS maps, FEMA maps, Fish and Wildlife, NWI maps, all that kind of stuff, locations where the photographs were taken. So it's just a very nice report. Standards for maps and figures. They have a whole bunch of data on here as well. And then references. And of course, they also would like to see who did the work. There's usually that's provided in here somewhere. But they want a whole bunch of information there. So it is a pretty detailed approach here. There's data collections, the GIS data files. They have standards for that. There's a separate document just for that. And then they've got a template here. And this is kind of what you're looking for in terms of, what the setup should look like. Now, I have worked with many, many firms over the years. We actually used to teach this actual thing as a part of our delineation class. The problem is that we got too many other things added, especially with the advent of the regional supplements, and it just became overwhelming. So we just assumed that companies were, doing this, because mostly what we would get from students is like, well, we already do this. We have a template at the office, and I would say, oh yeah, don't mess with the template. And they have to, just make sure it's right, but don't want to presume that we have, something else that is, beyond what, the company would normally do, if that's, if it feels like it covers it. So to that end, we do have we have this laid out, and the Corps was kind enough to give this to you as a template if you don't have it. What I'm shocked to see is how many companies don't do any of this. You basically, a typical ARDR submission that's been coming in through the RRS is a couple of 8.5 by 11 cut sheet maps, and maybe a page of photographs, and maybe a couple data forms with no explanation, no report, no write-up, no nothing, just the basic data. And that's what's being submitted. Now, the larger firms aren't doing that. And actually, just as by way of example, I was doing a little for the show prep here today. I was doing a little research, and I came across, just to get rid of me here, because you need to see the whole camera here, so let me get rid of me. This project was just made the news it's outside of Richmond. This was this is a public notice that was published on May 13th, so just a couple days ago. And this is for the Google Project Lock, Chesterfield County, Virginia. It's for the Google data center. And they've got on here, the who, what, where, when. And if you're worried about people seeing your work, you should be, because they do mention the company here. And I am very impressed with the work. So I have no compunction. Maybe they'll get mad at me, but Timmins Group did the work here. I think they did a beautiful job on it in terms of, now, I'm not a big fan of filling in wetlands to build data centers, but in terms of the quality of the work that they did, it was stellar. I mean, it was really, really great. It looked great. So, it's a good example. So you can pull one of these reports. I mean, I have no special, privileges here to get this. They gave you just, this is the summation sheet, and the consultant wrote this. And then you can actually go flip up here. You can get the copy of the whole thing by clicking this link here. I'll do this in another tab so you can see it. So then they have a list of all of the documents that you can download. And I just pulled one randomly, and it made me cry. The reason was because it was so pretty. I just saw the soil types. They drove it down. They got the F3 right. They got the F6 right, and they got the A11 right. And that's we call that the trifecta in hydric soils world. And I was just so happy to see that. And that was like the second data form I looked at, and I went through a bunch of them. And gosh, they're so nice. I just was very happy to see what a good job they did. Including even using the right form down here on the bottom, the right region, the latest and greatest, and so forth. You can see this was submitted in January of this year, so this was all in here. This is all public record, though. So when you submit, you're submitting, and this is going to have to survive public scrutiny because it goes into the public notice. And once you've applied for one of these things, and this was going to be for an individual permit, they're looking at roughly, I think it's about 5 acres total of actual wetland impact. And then they have a mitigation credit table here that they did to come up with it. And they actually have a little surplus. So I guess they'll use that to build something somewhere else. But basically that's the idea. The biggest problem they actually have on this is they've got an old cemetery they're trying to deal with. So some cultural resource issues that are kind of problematic for them. But there is 5 acres of wetlands is an individual permit. It's going to take quite a bit to get this thing done. But it's a big project, and Google has, basically wanted to build this thing here. So anyway, I just put this out there because if you are wondering, who sees your reports, who sees your projects, the world sees your projects. So this is a great example of one. You can go through the detail, and if you want a good example of what one looks like for real, this is public record, so there's no need to redact anything. You can take a look at it, and it's really cool. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of highlight that one. I'll go back to this reporting thing here. Back to the August announcement, we had another document here, and I'm not going to go into this. Is starting to turn into a class here if I go too much longer. But the document here, basically, you can see under here the Guide for Recording Aquatic Resource Delineations using the GNSS. There is a new standard for how to actually use your GPS out in the field and using your global navigation and all the standards and the metadata and everything else that they want. And that's been a big deal. So they've got a lot of stuff there. So the point of all of this is we have heard, I hear at meetings when I go to, is that this ARDR is overkill. Oh my gosh, I've heard that from a whole bunch of people. We don't do this work. It's extra paperwork. Our clients don't want to pay for that. It's just paper. Nobody's going to look at it. Well, the bad news is this is here to stay. The ARDR, came out last year. They're rolling it out slowly. Some of the districts don't even know about it, but they are becoming aware of it. And you'll get a little bit of pushback sometimes from the districts. It's like, what's that? They don't do always the best job disseminating this information within the districts, but they get there. So the issue is addressing it as overkill. Well, two things. It's not a new reaction. I guess I should be glad to say this. I remember when the regional supplements came out. It went from about 2008, I think was the first one, the Arid West, all the way to 2012, which was, I think, the last one actually out, went up in the North Central, Northeast. The Eastern Mountains of Piedmont came out in about the same time, and the Inland Gulf Coastal Plain, I think, was 2010. So they were all coming out about that time, and we looked at it, and I had a little bit of, the stages of grief, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Except that it came out in the Federal Register. That was a little bit of a problem because that meant this was official. The issue between the 87 manual and the regional supplements was that the 87 manual tells you how to do a delineation. It doesn't actually tell you what the result is in terms of is it a wetland or isn't it a wetland. They took that out of the 87 manual so that it became a non-regulatory document. In that sense, it's strictly a technical manual. The problem with the regional supplements is that if you do a wetland delineation, you're going to become aware that this is in fact actually a wetland, and that wetland can then have some implication that it might be jurisdictional. So there was a lot of pushback within the consultant community about, oh my gosh, these regional supplements are overkill. Who's ever going to do these soils? We never did this before. It was all the same stuff. I'm hearing the same noise today about the ARDR. I think the big issue is that the ARDR had been the standard for many, many years, and I think it's just gotten shortcutted over time because it gets very competitive. What you're seeing is that there are some good firms out there. There's some not so good firms out there, and weeding that out is becoming very difficult. We get asked all the time about, who do we know that's any good? We got a project we want to do, and we've been burned by 3 consultants, that just don't seem to know what they're doing, and yet they're charging for it, which I understand. So this, I think, is an attempt to do a bit of a sort. One of my public comments, and I'm kind of trying to lead the charge on this, is to get some sort of national or even regional or state or something certification. Virginia, actually, it's no accident this was a better report in Virginia, is because they have a license in Virginia. So there's a standard there. We need some accountability in this business. I had a group of realtors I was teaching the other day, and we do a real estate kind of wetland sensitivity class. And the issue is that they could not believe that there was no license to do a wetland delineation. They're like, they're used to hire, like, if you want to get a home inspection done, it's got to be a home inspector, if the licensed. If you want a termite inspection, if you want, any of those sort of things, and they're used to doing that. And they're saying, well, you mean somebody who's going to potentially make a multi-million-dollar decision on my property doesn't have any sort of license and is not accountable to anybody? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. Welcome to our world. So that's a problem, So my public comment to the Corps was, let's revisit that 1993 plan that they had about essentially doing a wetland licensure. So that was a big plus on that. So love to hear from you guys. Let me put the number back up if you want to call in. Let me find that. And love to hear from you. Get some questions. I know we were having technical issues early on there. Hopefully those got resolved. But you can always call in. Raina's anxiously waiting to hear from you. If you can, that would be great. But basically just give us a 919-297-2540 if you want to do that. And I'm going to jump over to the super secret RRS. Now, I have a sandbox account with the Army Corps, and this is kind of the issue. We do have a second here. We do have a bunch of options here. Because I'm trying to lost my train of thought there. Sorry. But basically, we have a bunch of options on how to work with this system, and the idea is that you have a starter request, public notice, report violations. There's some general information here. The starter request is what most folks work with. And now, again, I'm in the sandbox. I have to sign in again because if I did too long, I signed out. I use my super secret Gmail, and it says, would you like to start a new request based on existing project? I'm going to use do I want to start a new request? Yes, I guess I want to do that. I'm going to pick my test one here, and this is one I made up. So you're going to work on your project, and this kind of works you through it. There's a couple screens they make you go through. They're going to ask you, do you need a permit? Do you need pre-construction notification, ARDR? So we definitely are going to do that. Do we want a JD or not? I always want a JD. So we're going to go through that. And essentially, it's a pre-application scoping, maybe a permit, things like that. So you have to decide one of those couple things. Where's the site located? Conveniently located at our office. So we got a wetland here. And this is the TurboTax part of the process here. So this is in the RRS. There's instructions which you can go through, and then you go right into the meat of it. Now, again, if you were doing this on the actual RRS, you're going to have a problem because you're creating a project, and they're going to be like, you're going to get a number, all that kind of stuff. So this is a sandbox that we use for training, but because you can see here, that's why it's a test. And there is a little bit of difference between this one and the one. They're always tweaking it, but you can see the basic here. We can put an agent in here. The authorization letter, where you want to put the letter, the name of the applicant, contact information, all that stuff is in there. Then the general project information, and then, does it have a file number previously? Yes or no? What's the description, purpose, activity? And then the jurisdictional information, what's the relationship you request? I own the property, a purchaser, I'm an agent. And then have you requesting, are you asking them to provide a written jurisdictional determination, AKA, do you want an AJD? So mine always would be yes. And I want it approved. That's just me. So we can go through that. And you can see as you're going down here, now I haven't filled everything out. You can see the little red things here that are telling me, okay, I've got to go back and do more. Again, it's a lot like TurboTax. So you go through the property owners and you can put the property owner information in here. And then we get into the meat of the ARDR. They have a bunch of guides on what they want and how to put it in, how to do the files and such. But basically, at the end of the day, you're going to create for each aquatic resource, you're going to create, provide a bunch of different information here. The Cowardin code, the HGM code, and again, conveniently, the Swamp School is offering classes in both of these. We actually have two different HGM classes. We have an HGM class on basically kind of high-level view, so you can explain to your clients what exactly is an HGM, and then we actually get into the nitty-gritty on how to do an HGM, which is a bit tricky, but we have to put that in there. So hydrogeomorphic models, what that stands for. The Cowardin code is your PFO1s and things like that. So we have all this in here. So all of that would be filled out per resource. Now you're going to have a additional information here, and that's your supporting section here, and you're simply going to be providing documents that you have that you'd be uploading. And this is going to be what you're going to be uploading. So you might have your data forms in here, your pictures, whatever else that you need. You can't have individual files exceeding 100 megabytes, which is always a problem with pictures. So you want to keep those pictures small. Sometimes just putting them in a Word document can be huge. There's actually some pretty cool things you can do with WordPress, or not WordPress. What is that thing called? PowerPoint is actually kind of an interesting way to compress pictures. But 100 megabytes is not that much space. 500 megs per save, so you may have to go back a couple times to do this. So just some cautionary. But this is your report. So basically, copy report be uploaded here, and they want all that stuff in there. There's some issues with the characters and the names, things like that. So that's your supporting information. So you do that, and then you eventually certify and sign, and you're done. So it is, again, literally TurboTax. You just keep going. But as you can see here, I've got a lot of red little things here. The only thing I did was read the instructions. So that's the sum total of it. So that is the RRS in a nutshell. And there's a bunch of help on that online. But this is a pretty cool thing, and it's where the Corps is going. Some of the districts have implemented this. Some of the districts are still rolling this out. I mean, they started it, I guess, letting people know about it just about a year ago. And they have a fair amount of buy-in on this right now. The Wilmington district is, I think, where this kind of started in North Carolina. We've seen a lot of it, and it has been extensively used here. So it's pretty cool. But you do need to be aware that there's a lot more information being requested, but the idea is supposed to turn this around. Ideally, if you've done everything right and it's relatively simple, they may not even have to come out and look at the site. They can do a PJD. They could do everything from, pretty much their office. And the delineation concurrence was the other thing that they also have on that. So that is a few things on that. Now, the last thing I wanted to cover, let me see if I've got anything else here. I'm going to go back to me. It's been a while since I've been here. So I'll just cut to me. Hi there. The last thing is basically looking at some mistakes. One of the things is treating the ARDR as a form. It's, just as a form and just filling out everything. I mean, you get the classic, just click the button until you pass. And that's not a good plan. So you don't want to do that. Using the wrong regional supplement is one of the biggest errors that we see in consultants. And then weak soil documentation, basically hydric soils need to be supported. The other thing is that a lot of times you'll have a situation with a hydric soil where you've identified, let's say a soil has the presence of oxidized rhizosphere. So you're going to say you have redox concentrations and you get a certain percentage. And then you say, well, I have no other, hydrology indicators, therefore I don't have a wetland. Well, Oxidized rhizospheres in the upper part is actually a hydrology indicator, and it's a primary indicator, which would then mean you have a wetland. So you have to be aware that some of these soil indicators do also overlap with the hydrology indicators. Also, on the top of the data form, there's things like landform, things like that. Those should be consistent. For example, if you have a Piedmont floodplain soil, you ought to be in a floodplain, and that should be reflected on the data form. So things like that. There's a lot of errors on that. So on that note, we have decided to do something about this. We have seen a whole bunch of problems. I'm going to fade into this. And we are doing what we're calling, for now, the working title is FieldDoc. And this is a pilot study, and we're inviting our listeners to this study. What we're looking for is volunteers to basically help us with this. Now, what all you have to do is submit the data. But we're setting up a portal. It's not quite ready yet, so I'm just telling you about it because if you click any of the buttons, and we haven't provided the link for this yet, but it's FieldDoc, nothing works right now. But what we're getting started with is you're going to love this, an AI review of your data forms. So this is not to compete with Ecobot or WildNote or the Core's free automatic data forms, the Excel forms, things like that. This is, let me back here because I can get there. This is meant to be a QA/QC approach where we can basically do a review of your data forms before you put it into the RRS. And it's meant to be a quick turnaround. Now, there's a human component to this, and there's also an automated component to this, an AI component to this. We are working on the AI right now. It's a pretty complicated system because we're having to cross-reference the data. Now, what we're going for is you should be able to upload any form of data form. So a PDF, a doc, an Excel file. I think WildNote and Ecobot both put out PDFs, whatever the form is. And that actually we're kind of going toward the PDF is the way to do it. So you don't have to do anything other than upload the data form, and you upload it into our system, and then we come back with, here's some things to be worried about. Here's some issues. Now, we can't verify the field data without actually going in the field, but we can notice, like, for example, I showed you that one, the F3, F6, A11. A lot of people miss that. You might have the F3 and F6 in it, and I'm like, well, where's the A11? Things like that. There's a lot of errors we've seen. We have reviewed, I can't believe, in the 20 years since we've been doing online training. I can't believe it's been 20 years. We actually did our first online training class in 2006. We have an issue where we have actually set up reviewing data forms as part of our online classes, and we do this with our hybrid classes and our in-person classes. Well, that is a huge database that we have. Now, we don't share that data with anybody, and I don't know if we could even retrieve some of it. It's so old. But the idea is that we have gotten really, really good at looking at data forms and seeing what's wrong and what's right. So much so that we've kind of come up with our own internal QA/QC system on how to even review that. So we've been pushing this out, and we've got a whole team here to be able to do this. So we're setting up essentially a portal. And for right now, we're just looking at a small group of consulting companies that would be willing to volunteer some data. We can't have you redact the locations because that's part of it, but you can certainly redact the client information and things like that. We just need to, we're really interested in the data, and part of the data is where is the site located. So we do need that. But if you're able to do that, I mean, we can also pull stuff off the web and just pull data in, like the group, the Timmons group did that thing. The problems would be all good, and we wouldn't pass, everything would pass. But we're looking at stuff that maybe you're struggling with, like you don't know. This is all confidential, and the ultimate product will basically be a system that you'll be able to upload the data. The AI will give you basically a first cut review on what's wrong with the data, if there's anything wrong, or what's right, or maybe get a little gold star on it or something. And then essentially you can move forward with it. So then you can confidently submit your data to the RRS. And so this would be alongside any of the automated data form software. It's meant to be the next review. So it's sort of a QA/QC review. Now, as far as companies that are already pretty well established with doing this type of work, one of the things that we're also looking at doing is this or how this would help. So let's say you have a company and you've got, a whole bunch of senior people there that, they don't need us to tell them how to do this. They know how to do it. But the problem is that they've got the Google site, holy hat, there's a lot of data on there. Well, the just the sheer volume of data that has to be QA/QC'd, it's meant to help with that, to speed that along. So the idea is that even for a larger company who have highly qualified people, you're trying to train your people, you're trying to get everybody up to speed on how to do a delineation, and you don't necessarily have all the senior staff available all the time to do this. So it's meant to be kind of like a senior staff in a box to help them out and basically help with the data. So anyway, long story short on that, that's what we're going for. So it's a data, we're basically introducing it. It's meant to be an AI assisted review. There's human QA/QC insight. We're trying to build this out. Initially, we've got a pretty good AI team here, so we're trying to get the bugs worked out of that. So that's why we're doing this as a field one, and we're not charging for any of this right now. We're just looking for folks that are willing to volunteer some data. So we will have this up for right now. If you're interested in doing that, you can take a look at our site here. But what we're actually going to do, let me just put up I never did actually put this one up. I will put this up. If you want to send us an email to the support at swampschool.org and say, sure, I'd be interested in doing that. Let me just scroll up a little bit here. We'll eventually have this on here to apply to the pilot study, but it is a really cool program. We're excited to offer to you guys, and we hope that, perhaps this would be something you'd be interested in pursuing down the road. So we're trying to, I know some people are scared of AI and don't, that's going to take over the world and, how and all that stuff. But the idea basically is that we are trying to make this a little more efficient. We think we can nail down the common errors pretty regularly, and it would save you guys a lot of time and making sure that you've got quality information going into the core. That's our goal on this. So anyway, if you are able to participate in that study, I would be very grateful for the help. So. What else do we have? I think I've got that. I did that. They did that. So it's just back to me. So with that, I will cut to me. And again, if you want to send us any offline questions, you can also just send in a question to swampschool.org, support at swampschool.org, and we will be happy to answer your questions. We are having our next workshop here, our next show next week. On Wednesdays. We did do a survey of who's interested in what days and what were the best days for everybody. And believe it or not, it was kind of a tie between Wednesday and Friday. But with summer coming up, I've got complications with Fridays, so I can't be here. So we're gonna have to defer to. It was a big population of numbers here, but we did have a few people respond back. We actually had. Every day of the week, somebody responded to something. So except for Tuesday, there was something wrong with Tuesday, but we had Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So we landed on Wednesday. So we're going to stick with this because I know it's hard. You're trying to make plans if you want to watch the show to know when it's going to be available to you. Now, we will push this show back out onto YouTube this afternoon or tomorrow. So definitely, check us out. We would very much appreciate if you could subscribe. We need subscribers. We're trying to get a little more points with YouTube. So if you could subscribe, that would be appreciated to our channel. But certainly like or, comment on it or anything like that. And definitely reach out to us if you have any questions afterwards. Again, I'll put this back up, the support, and let us know, what's going on in your world. So with that, I appreciate that. A couple just last shameless plugs, if you will. We have a macroinvertebrate class on June 2nd to the 4th here in North Carolina. And if you are into doing any of these stream classifications, understanding, what these different species are, how to classify them, this is kind of the basis for most of the stream classification methodologies across the country. So it doesn't just have to be in North Carolina. The instructor that we have, Greg, that teaches it, also teaches the state certified program. So you can go for the license. It's a different program, and North Carolina has a little weird way of dealing with the certifications because it's only available to people who actually work for the state of North Carolina. But a lot of consultants take it. But if you're looking for just a straight, great how to identify macroinvertebrates, what to look for, playing in the water. We have a whole lab set up here at the shop with microscopes, the whole 9 yards. So we'd love to see you there. So we could definitely do it. We've got a few people signed up for it, so we're anxious to get that one full and get some pretty. We got some pretty cool sites near our office, so it's not even a lot of driving around to get to these things. We got that. We've got our delineation class. I think the week after that, or two. No, it's the end of the month, the end of June, back here in North Carolina. And that class is getting quite full. If you are looking for delineation training, we have one here. For some reason, we get June and July. It can be a little warm out, but we get a lot of folks that sign up for both those classes. And I think we have people sign up in both of them right now. And I know the June one's getting quite full. So if you need wetland delineation training, please, sign up right away, because we are anxious to have you. When we don't like to turn anyone away for the fact that we're full, but we're getting close on a couple of these classes. So just give you a heads up there. With that, I wish you well. I hope everything is going well for you, and we will see you next week. So I'm going to sign off, and I appreciate your attention. So have a great day, and thanks for being a great listener.